Is there confusion about narcissism? You darn well bet there is, and there should be, because narcissists are all about the huff and puff and are empty with a huge void inside. Let's examine that today on Ask a Shrink. Hang on. So yeah, you hear a lot about narcissism today. I mean, it's always been around, but of course today in the news, you often hear about narcissism. And let's examine that more, not only on the political scene, but also in terms of our lives with our family members and how it can impact our life if you happen to be raised by a narcissist or have a good friend or somebody significant in your life who is a narcissist. You need to really be aware of that because there's a lot of potential pitfalls of hanging around somebody who has narcissism traits or maybe has narcissistic personality disorder as a diagnosis. So the reason narcissists are so big on the counterattack and being defensive with you is because they're so sensitive to criticism or being, in their mind, defeated in any way. Because criticism makes them feel empty and hollow and maybe taps into that void that they really feel about themselves inside, they react with disdain and bitterness and attack. They have to cover up what's really there, which in essence is nothing. Now, what's the easiest way to do a big cover-up is to act like nothing bothers you and to act like you're the king of the hill and to puff yourself up and make yourself mightier than thou and that you have everything in control, but it's all an act, once again, to shelter the real vulnerable, intimate, scary feelings that are inside of them. This grandiosity, which is really what's going on here, can really confuse people who are initially maybe meeting a narcissist because at first they can appear friendly and charismatic and boy, they seem so confident, and it takes a while to see through the cracks in the foundation, if you will, that there's nobody really home there. Now, if you're in a relationship, that can show itself by the person covering up, by being extra controlling with you in the relationship, very critical of you, only focusing on their own opinion and what they want, somehow turning everything around if you've had an argument and putting all the blame on you, not being able to meet you halfway with compromise and communication and talking honestly and openly about their feelings and sharing. None of that can really happen because they're not capable of it. But again, it takes a while to see through the cracks sometimes. So that's why if you're in the dating world and you're around somebody like that, that's a huge red flag. Run for the hills because you're in for a potential lifetime of problems trying to maintain a relationship with somebody like that. If you crack that facade, that's when they're really going to sort of come at you with both guns drawn because they've been exposed and they don't like that. So that's when they're going to go on super attack mode if you're able to see through them and you call them out on it. Because they're not really able to process feelings and know what they're all about, all they can really do is cover up and therefore not be able to really move on, to process something, to heal, to move on in their life to their next chapter. They're always going to usually harbor this angst or anger. You did it, you wrecked this. If it wasn't for you, things would be perfect. It's all about the blame game. So this obviously applies to being raised by a narcissist. There are many problems for children who are raised by a narcissistic parent. I've done several videos on emotional incest. You can click up right now on this link above for an overview of emotional incest. But basically, emotional incest typically is done from a narcissistic type of parent to a child. And what that is that they're typically in an unhappy marriage. They want some sort of power or control for whatever reason, and they zoom in on one of their children and decide he's going to be my little mini husband or she's going to be my little mini wife. So they choose a child to take over for their own benefit. It's for their own selfish needs. And in doing that, they heap all this attention on the child, which from the outside may look like love, but it's very conditional love, if you even want to use the term love. It's based on what they want, what's best for the parent, not for the child's needs, not what's best for the child to help that child grow and mature and go through healthy developmental stages. No, all those can be thwarted because the adult, the narcissistic adult, can zoom in and take that child over. And again, quite typically this happens if the marriage is unhappy and somebody doesn't want to leave the marriage. They don't know how to deal with that head on and talk to their significant other or their spouse about the problems in the marriage. So they decide one way to handle this is screw my husband, screw my wife. They can just stay here if they want. I'm going to go in and take over one of my children. And that can do so much emotional harm to a child. And if you're interacting with a narcissist, whether it's a coworker or a loved one or somebody you're dating and falling in love with, it can all seem so confusing because until you figure this out, you're wondering, where are these attacks coming from? And you start to doubt yourself. That's kind of gaslighting, right? Where you start to doubt yourself because of all these attacks and you're wondering, did I do something wrong? And you have to remind yourself, no, you did not. You're dealing with a very emotionally unstable person, and it's appropriate and important to label it as such. That way you're not drawn into their stuff, right? Because part of what they do with their stuff is they blame people and try to manipulate and find ways to put you down. And it is very confusing, especially for children when they're growing up and are raised by a narcissistic parent, because a kid doesn't know how to say, I didn't do anything wrong. I think I'm okay here. I think my parent is wacko. They don't know how to put that into words, and they may not even be clear about what that means. So for children who are raised this way, it takes a lifetime sometimes of working through and processing all the feelings they went through as a way to understand themselves and therefore catch up with the developmental stages that were denied them from the earlier chronological years of their life. The best thing to do if somebody around you has these traits is have a lot of healthy boundaries and or get out of Dodge if you can. If you can cut off somebody like that in your life, remove yourself from their presence, that's the best way to go if they're toxic and unhealthy. If you can't do that, let's say it's a coworker, you have to work side by side in a cubicle with them every day. As much as you can, have healthy boundaries, watch what you say, protect yourself, be aware of any potential manipulation or ways that the narcissist is going to try to gain control. Have a lot of awareness, and again, keep yourself in your own separate world as much as you can, as opposed to opening yourself up to the narcissist, and therefore whatever information or feelings you share or ways you make yourself available can be turned around and used against you. So be aware of that. Same thing goes if you're in a dating relationship. Same thing for children, but then again, children aren't going to really get it because they're too young, and that's why you grow up and you have to name what you went through, which is emotional incest. And I think it's important to talk about all this because it's a lot more common than people realize. One tip that can help a little bit is to view them as a little 2-year-old child having a temper tantrum, because that in essence, in a way, is what's going on. So view them literally, visualize a little 2-year-old in front of you acting out. All of a sudden it brings your power back. You realize who you are. You're a grown adult working in essence or talking in essence or falling in love with essence with a little 2-year-old who doesn't know any better, and they certainly don't know who they are. So that's one way to quickly give yourself a handle on who you're dealing with until you get this more sorted out. And again, if you're in a relationship with somebody who has these traits, time to do some soul searching and ask yourself why you're choosing to be involved with a narcissist, why you find that appealing, and know that if you do move forward, it may be, in fact, a very difficult life for you. Something to think about. Please leave me some comments below. I'd love to hear from you. Any thoughts about narcissists in general? Please subscribe to my mental health YouTube channel if you like these kind of videos. And until next week, this is Brad Shore signing off from Ask a Shrink.